What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Powered by Christ podcast, and you are now tuning in to season 1, episode 10. This episode right here, I'm specifically going to be talking about my story. This video right here is a solo podcast. Nobody's in the room with me right now. Nobody's around me. Nobody's even near me. So y'all stay tuned. This film right here will most likely be script read, so y'all just bear with me. So if you're viewing me visually and you see me keep looking down, understand that I'm reading off of a script that I wrote. The script is ultimately my story. But particularly, I'll be starting all the way from elementary school to all the way up until college now for me. So whoever's new to my podcast, my name is Malachi Jones, and I was born in Pensacola, Florida, but raised my whole life up until 18 in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. And I know some people will be questioning and commenting, where's Fort Walton Beach at? Or I've never heard of Fort Walton Beach at all. Or your city must be so tiny. But Fort Walton Beach is located in the very panhandle of Florida, not too far from Destin, Florida or Pensacola, Florida itself. It's basically located in the northwestern part of Florida. And it's even close to 2 hours away from Panama City. But starting it off with elementary school, I went to a small elementary school called Wright Elementary, and understand that as I move forward in my lifetime and in chronological order, some way, form, or fashion, I'm going to tie every single stage of my life to God. Now, elementary school is very foggy to remember for me, but I know that we went on a whole lot of field trips and I did a whole lot of group projects. But aside from that, I so clearly remember my 3rd and 4th grade years because of the significant amount of trouble that I got in. But those 2 school years, I used to be loud, unfocused, nosy, undisciplined, and a copy on other people's styles. And I was even disobedient to my parents at the time. But 4th grade though, I was just disobedient, unfocused, unattentive, uninterested, not caring, and a big follower of the pack. But as I look back at that time, I give myself grace because nobody truly knows who they are in 4th grade. Like, we're all still young and we're all still trying to develop our minds in 4th grade. But the 4th to 5th grade jump was such a significant jump. I grew as a person. I had a growth shift in becoming more organized, and I became more focused that year. I was also in an all boys class that same year, and I had a blast. But I tie that to God in this transition because God has the power to just simply snap his fingers, and all the other areas of your life simply start to fill up with spiritual liquid. And mind you, this wasn't even something I prayed for because my prayer life with God wasn't that strong in 5th grade. I was still active in my church community and offered to pray every now and then, but I wasn't strong. I was even involved in this after-school youth program called Aspire to get homework done and socialize with others. I say that to say this though: when God favors you at a super young age, He accelerates your spiritual liquid to the point where as your favor increases, your liquid will start to overflow. I feel like I said that right there beautifully. I was like 10 at the time. I also say that to say that God chooses you even when you don't even have the courage to choose yourself or ask to be chose. He sees the gifts and talents inside of us that we don't even see in ourselves. But I talked about elementary school long enough, so now come with me on this bold transition, middle school. Now, middle school was a whole different ball game, not the most different ball game. In 6th grade for me, I knew a lot of people from my past elementary school, but half of the kids from my elementary either transferred, moved states, or simply just started off at a different middle school. I remember getting my locker that year and I was so overly excited, almost like a kid jumping and screaming in joy. 6th grade year hurt and I was foolish, but surprisingly not the most foolish of them all. And you're probably wondering which one is the most foolish. What year of middle school could he possibly have been that foolish? And how is it not 6th grade that he was the most foolish? Because you're just starting out middle school. I was hurt because I got cut from the basketball team, and I was foolish because I used to put notes in girls' lockers I had crushes on, slapbox in the bathroom, skip classes sometimes to fit in, and intentionally forget about doing my homework often. And to be honest, my only definition of crush as a 6th grader was just somebody who looks good. So basically many girls. But now, my 18-year-old version of crush is someone who looks more spiritually attractive than physically attractive. And I feel like I put that well too. Next is 7th grade, probably the most foolish out of them all. And you're probably thinking, why is 7th grade the most foolish for him? What did he do? What could he have possibly done to be that foolish in 7th grade? And I'm gonna tell you right now, middle school, I probably did the craziest stuff in middle school. I feel like I did stuff at each stage of my life that I wasn't proud of. But overall, this is my story. This is what molded me, and this is what shaped me. So I'm gonna continue. I did so much dumb things in 7th grade, like pantsing another dude, stealing another girl's phone, not turning in my work in class, being lazy at school, and still even following the crowd in wrong trends, even pulling someone else's chair before they sat down in class, and a fight broke out after that. Man, 7th grade, I did the most stuff. Like, if you was physically there to witness everything that I had did in 7th grade, you would have been like, this dude is a fool. Who would have said that I'm a fool if you was physically right there seeing me in 7th grade? I did so much dirt. What matters is what I learned from it. But even in the midst of all that, that didn't mean that God was not moving. Cause like the shift I had from 4th to 5th grade, I had a drastically bigger, different shift going into 8th grade. My 8th grade year was probably the best year for me in middle school. I'm about to explain why. This shows that everything you go through in life, some even earlier than others, some people even earlier than others, some things even earlier than others, is different with everybody overall. But everything that you think was made to break you is actually what God whole time was trying to use to strengthen you. And you might be thinking, strengthen my muscles, strengthen what? But a lot of people know what I'm talking about. When God wants to strengthen you, he will take you through a whole lot of stuff. Sometimes that includes taking you through stuff that you didn't ask to go through, taking you through stuff nobody else has ever been through, taking you through stuff that nobody else in your family has been through. Because when you go through stuff that other people have not been through, when you go through stuff that somebody has not experienced, you have that experience under your belt. You know what to do in those type of situations. You know what to do in those type of circumstances. So when you go through something different that nobody else has ever gone through, that means your story is legendary. That means you're doing something that nobody else has ever done. You're being courageous, you're being brave, and you're taking a risk. Sometimes we choose to go through things because we want to take the hard way, not listen to God, and other times God will put us through things even when we didn't ask. So it's always one of the two. Either A, God will put us through things, or we put ourselves through unnecessary things by disobedience to God, by not listening to God. So not everything that comes your way that you think is meant to break you is meant to break you. Most stuff is actually meant to shape you. So continuing on with my story, by most of middle school, I went through a lot of rejection, criticism, punishment, and consequential discipline. But again, just like elementary school, the last year was the best year for me. I made the basketball team and started. I hooped outside of school. I worked out a lot, and I also made a lot of new friends that I had never met before. So 8th grade most definitely was the smoothest of all middle school because I had stayed on top of all my work, made good bonds with my teachers, and formed good bonds with my teammates. So now middle school ended, and now fly with me on my maturity shift to high school. And not to mention, COVID had just hit my 8th grade year, lasted until my whole freshman year. But I remember going to school in person for the whole second semester and having a block schedule. I had built great bonds with my teachers, even though I only had like 4. I used to do public interviews on YouTube at the time, ranging from my freshman year to my early junior year. So that should tell you that I've always liked roles or events involving talking. But starting college is right when the talking involved decisions for me gets confusing. It even takes a lot of courage for me right now to even get this podcast out to the world. And even though I rarely ever appear shy or fearful in my podcast, I still get slightly nervous deep down. You just can't tell because I play it off so well. So that's part of the reason why I even started doing my podcast, to fully overcome my fears and speaking in front of a large audience. And even though my podcast right now at the moment have a small audience, it's always intended towards the audience of one. And that's the largest audience ever. Because the audience of one has the power to change my videos to the audience of thousands, and then to the audience of millions. But I'm gonna continue on with my story. But next was sophomore year, when I had made the basketball team and COVID severity had decreased, allowing my high school to be fully open back up. Sophomore year was definitely fun for me, but it wasn't the most fun. I had did track that year, and my 2 upperclassmen years were a funny sequence. I got cut from the hoops team my junior and senior year, but I gladly made the track team. I ran the 100, 200, and 400 events, and I loved it. Summarizing high school as a whole, I found so much out about myself though. I learned a whole lot of lessons too. I learned that everybody isn't my friend. I learned how to make music, and I learned that everything in life won't go as you want it to, and everything in life won't go as planned. Significantly, a friend that I had grew up with since like the age of 3, we went separate paths in high school. I'm not gonna name names, but he was hanging with a lot of evil and negative people that didn't quite carry the same values I had at the time. And not to say that I'm perfect or even knew fully who I was at the time, but I know for a fact that what he was into was far different than my beliefs. His presence, friends, and vibes all felt so evil, lustful, greedy, prideful, and arrogant, almost like they had no love for God at all. But I know I had love for God in my heart. My love for God was growing stronger gradually, but that didn't mean that I didn't sin or make mistakes either. The farthest that I had ever been from God was high school, and surprisingly not middle school. High school, I was the farthest from God that I had ever been. I say this because my junior year of high school, when I was 16, I committed fornication twice with 2 different girls. And I feel like the motives behind why I did this is because the evil characteristics of my lifelong friend rubbed off on me. It got the best of me. My flesh got the best of me. Their mindset, my past friend and everybody he used to hang with, their mindset was that it's cool to use as many attractive girls as you can. But now that I'm older and more spiritually mature, Christ says otherwise. And the fornication felt good in the moment, but I felt horrible after. It wasn't until after the second time that I did the do that I extremely felt the conviction, and I flooded my bed with tears. I'll never forget that same night that I had done it. I had went home, and I remember my mom was asking me, where were you? What were you doing all this time? So what were you doing? You wouldn't explain to me? And I remember making something up, but she wasn't going for it. But she gave me a pass right before I was about to tell her exactly what I did. And I was happy that she gave me a pass, but then I thought I could fully get away with it. Because one thing for sure, if you sin bad, you lie about it, that's already 2 sins. But whenever you get past your parents and then you go to God about it and talk to him, that's somebody you can't get past. That's somebody who will check you before you get in check. When you sin and you think you can get away with it, just know God is coming for you. And he has his different ways of expressing things to different people. Like if someone sins, for one person, their conviction might be super bad, and then And for another person, their conviction might be super light. It all depends on where you are in your walk with God. Like if you get heavily convicted, it's most likely because you're so close to him. But if you don't get heavily convicted at all, then that means you're probably farther away from him than somebody who is right here. This is God. This is somebody who gets heavily convicted, and this is their distance from God. And this is somebody who sins and doesn't get heavily convicted, and this is their distance from God. See the difference? So it's a big difference. I just know that having a wife and giving her my all completely outweighs any type of friend I find attractive. And I've never been in a situation where I've got married or gotten close to getting married just yet. But I just want to clear that up because that verse kind of sounded like I did, or I have. And from that point on, I permanently changed for the better. I no longer have the energy to even put myself in situations alone with somebody else of the opposite gender. Like the farthest I'll go, now that I'm so close to God and now that my roots are so much deeper, the most I would do and the farthest I would go is go to a public location and get something to eat. That's probably about it. Until I get to know someone for who they truly are, until I get to know someone for their relationship with God, until I get to know someone for how much they love God, or how strong their faith is, and what their goals are and ambitions and dreams, and until I get to know who inspires a person. Mind you, I'm talking about the opposite gender right now. Until I get to know that, then it's 100% vital for me personally to set up boundaries. Like now that I'm in college now, I have to say, no, I can't do that. No, I can't go there. No, I can't hang with this person. No, I can't go see this girl. No, I can't hang with this girl. Because for one, I don't know who she's been with and I don't know what she's done. And for two, I don't even know if she knows God or not. Like the first question you should be asking somebody who you're trying to get to know and somebody you think you can see yourself with, because the question isn't answered yet. You have to ask them this question: are you a Christian? And if they say no and you are, y'all would not look good together. It's simple as that. And somebody can say they're a Christian. Like you can be interested in someone and you could be talking to someone, getting to know someone, you know, intending to date them, and you ask them right when y'all start out if your desired significant other is a Christian, and they tell you yes, and you go for it off rip without seeing proof of them being a Christian. Mind you, proof is carrying the fruit of the Spirit. Check for their fruit of the Spirit. If they have no fruit of the Spirit, and they're probably not a Christian. Mind you, if who you like, if who you're interested in, who you want to marry, whatever the case may be, if they say they're not a Christian, then don't hang with them. Don't date them. I'm not saying y'all can't be friends, but I'm saying that since they're not a Christian, they're probably going to tempt you to do not Christian things. And mind you, if you were dating someone and y'all weren't married, right, and then they tell you that they are Christian, but they still say that they want to link alone, that's not a Christian move. So that's a move where you have to decide if you're going to go for it or if you're going to stay safe with God. You have two different categories of people. You have people who are Christians and you have people who aren't Christians. The ones who aren't Christians are always more likely heavily in sin. The ones who are Christians are the ones who don't make efforts to live very sinful lives. So always remember, when you're trying to look for a significant other, yeah, it's okay to find them attractive. If you find them attractive on the outside, make sure you more importantly find them attractive on the inside, spiritually, before you find them attractive physically. Looks are a plus, but looks aren't everything. Looks are just an add-on to the spiritual component who you're trying to look for, or of who you have your eyes on. But I'm gonna continue on with my story, and this is what it says: because spiritually speaking, our flesh is the weakest part of our bodies. So I know that if I ever intentionally put myself in those situations, then I will give in. There's no possible way to privately link up with someone by accident. And as I got older, decisions weighed way more heavily on me, and that meant my strength had to depend way more heavily on God. And that's why I started this whole podcast idea. Then I graduated high school. I came up with my podcast idea in my senior year of high school. It was like, what is something else I could do besides doing public interviews? And I was like, I already love talking, but why not create something that more heavily relates to talking than public interviews? And the most heavily related talking hobby that you can do, the podcast. If you're good at it, then why not go for it? So senior year was a year of growth. Definitely it was a growth of preparing for college, preparing for what I thought I was going to major. I'll talk later about that in my story. It was a year for detaching from old habits. Senior year was a year for discernment, most definitely. And senior year was also a year for slight self-discovery about myself. I went to a community college near home to major in nursing, and I hated it. I hated it because community college had no diversity in majors, was tiny, I only had 2 gyms. I felt like a majority of people at that college had closed off personalities, and one of my classes that I was taking at the time was extremely hard. Mind you, it was anatomy and physiology that I was taking. I only took 3 classes in full though that semester. Took anatomy and physiology, took college algebra, and I took English. And the 3 classes that I was taking weighed heavier because they were less. I remember finishing out my first semester of college, my first semester at a community college. Mind you, this community college was back home. It was probably about 10 minutes from home. Now I remember finishing with 2 A's and a high D, so ouch. When I first went to college, back at the community college back home, I initially wanted to become an anesthesiologist assistant. That career didn't want me to be that. So then my first semester ended and I got an acceptance letter to go to a 4-year university, and I was so excited. And specifically, the college was UNF, the one I'm at right now. I still transferred with nursing, but best believe I got out of that as soon as I could. Then I changed my major to computer science because most of my family recommended it, but later on my heart and interest said otherwise. And that taught me right there not to go along with human words, to go along with God's words. Then after computer science, I considered changing my major to IT, but then I said no because I overall strongly dislike sitting down and being too techie. I didn't want to picture myself at work every single day, just sitting down behind a desk. I know you're not in a cubicle like how you see in like the movies and TV shows, how people are in a whole bunch of cubicles, but I just didn't want to show up to work every day or be in a field where you're always sitting down being too techie. I'm saying too techie as a biased standpoint, but I felt like computer science and anything in the computer related field was too techie for me, and I just didn't want to go up to work and experience work every single day sitting behind a computer typing whatever I may be doing, most likely coding, but I just couldn't picture myself as sitting behind a computer doing that most of the time. And yeah, it was remote work too, where you're working from home and you have the option to be flexible with your work schedule and stuff like that, but even still, I still couldn't choose to go into computer science or anything tech related because I wanted to be up and moving around and talking and expressive. You can still be that way in computer science, but it's not focused around that, if y'all get what I'm saying. Then I was talking to my advisor because I wanted to change my major to physics to become a dentist, and I tried to avoid the science, but it hawked me right back down. I just hated science, so I knew personally for me, my major had to be something completely non-STEM related, guaranteed. But it was currently spring break and the deadline for filing my major was creeping up, so I had to act quick and I had to be real with myself. What am I strong at and what am I weak at? It's not that I couldn't do nursing or computer science or IT or dentistry, it's just that I knew that me personally, I wasn't willing to push myself that extra mile. I wasn't willing to push myself that extra hard. Other people will, but I knew my limit. I knew that I didn't want to cause a whole lot of burnout. So I wanted to choose something that better represents me. So I'm like, why not choose something that I'm naturally good at since birth? And it was talking, communicating, verbalizing with others, helping others with my voice. And this wasn't my first thought, but I imagine how much money I could be making in the end with my main career plus side hustles, and I ended up majoring in public relations with a minor in marketing. So proud of myself because that right there, I genuinely felt like God led me to make that decision, and that's how it should always be with everything. God should always lead us to make every decision that we make. Moving colleges for me was quite an experience, like how I told y'all earlier in my story, how I was taking classes at a community college close to home and it was like 10 minutes away. Then I got an acceptance letter in the mail from University of North Florida to transfer over there for nursing. It was real different because it was the first time I had ever actually been independent. It was the first time I had actually ever been by myself. Matter of fact, it was the farthest that I had ever been away from home. I was 5 hours away from home. It was just me, and mind you, I didn't say this at the start, but I'm my only child. I don't have any siblings. You know, I plan in the future that my future children don't have to deal with that issue, but I was an only child. Most people in my family aren't an only child. And when you think of, let's say you have a kid, right? Let's say your child goes away for college and it's just them. How nervous would you be? You would be nervous, but your child would probably be 10 times more nervous because they have so much stuff to figure out. They're down there by themselves. You always think, what is he doing? What is she doing? Because you always want the best for your child. And it's the same with me. I wanted the best for myself, but I was just so nervous initially when I came to UNF, especially when I was moving in my dorm. Moving in my dorm was kind of scary. It was January when I was moving in my dorm. I remember bringing all my stuff. It was me, my mom, my stepdad. And then after that, it was my grandparents. And then we had dropped everything off in my dorm. And then once we were done packing my dorm room, you know, making it look homey, after that, they straight dipped. I'm not saying they didn't say anything, but they were like, son, this is your new chapter. This is a new version of you. You have to mature, and we can't say much, so you figure it out. Have a good semester. And then straight like that, they just dipped. Straight like that. I mean, what much can you tell your child? You know, other parents will sit there and talk to their child for hours and hours. And then on the other hand, you have parents who will briefly talk to their children before they go after dropping them off. It's different for everybody. Some people cry when they get dropped off. As far as the kid who's going to college, some people cry when they get dropped off. Some people get very emotional. Some people get very sentimental. Some people get very quiet. Some people get very loud. It's different with everybody. But for me, my emotions was just straight happiness because I couldn't wait to see everything that I was going to accomplish at UNF. I knew it was going to be the biggest and the best chapter for me because I look at every season of life I'm in as the best season because I can maximize it. I can maximize whatever season I'm in literally by using my voice. If you know how to use your voice, you have already unlocked so many other areas of your life for God to be able to pour into, because God can't pour into a cup if the lid is still on it. The lid is still on the cup and the water is just gonna slide off. The water is the blessing. So I hope y'all get what I'm saying. If you really think about it, God can just snap his fingers and your cup can overflow with spiritual juice. So there really is no moral of the story because this is simply all my story. But I would say to the world that every step of the way of your own journey, always figure out what God is saying and revealing to you, both spiritually and personally. That was the end of my message I had to say. My name is Malachi. I go by Mal. I stream by MalWorldWide, and thanks for tuning in. This is my story. And I've been on my feet 10 toes, but I ain't worried about no saying. I'm an expert out my road. ghost, so I ain't worried about the hate. If serving Jesus ain't the goal, then it just won't be no debate. And I've been chasing God like gold, and I ain't boasting, I'm just saying. You want so much in life, you bold, but you can't get it by not praying. I gave the Lord my hand to hold, but he ain't going, he'll be staying.